Hi everyone, welcome to a new series, Beatles Ukulele with me, Matt Stead. Every lesson in this series we're going to take a new song by the Fab Four. We're going to analyse what's going on with the song, I'll explain how to play it, and I'll teach you all sorts of key skills including music theory, chords up the fretboard, chord melody and all sorts of fun things. We're going to really mix it up with these. Some will be song analysis, others will be teaching you to play chord melody, sometimes simple chords or chords up the fretboard. And we're going to cover the entire span of the Beatles' career, looking at all the different periods. Rather than going chronologically, I wanted to start with one of my favourite Beatles songs, and possibly Paul McCartney at the peak of his songwriting. We're going to look at the piece Penny Lane.
Penny Lane, there is a barber showing photographs of every head he's had the pleasure to know, and all the people that come and go stop and say hello.
We're going to do a really interesting song analysis with this, seeing how Paul McCartney changes between two key centres really smoothly. Then I'm going to show you some chords up the fretboard to make the solo section really come alive and to cover the instrumental. The song was written and recorded in 1966 for their seminal album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, but because of pressure from the record company for a single, it was eventually released as a double A-side with Strawberry Fields Forever. Most critics agree that this single really illustrated the two songwriters at the peak of their powers, John Lennon with Strawberry Fields Forever and Paul McCartney with Penny Lane. Unlike Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane really is quite a nostalgic, straightforward song, and he mentions lots of things that he genuinely saw in his childhood on his bus route, which briefly stopped at Penny Lane each day. So the barbershop, Violetti's, was really there, and the bank too on the corner. The only kind of artistic licence he had was that the fire station was actually a few hundred metres down the road, but not far from Penny Lane at all. Penny Lane, there is a barber showing photographs of every head he's had the pleasure to know, and all the people that come and go stop and say hello. On the corner is a banker with a motor car. The little children laugh at him behind his back, and the banker never wears a mask in the pouring rain. Very strange. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. There, beneath the blue suburban skies, I sit and meanwhile back Penny Lane, there is a fireman with an hourglass, and in his pocket is a portrait of the Queen. He likes to keep his fire engine clean. It's a clean machine. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. For a fish and finger pies, I sit and meanwhile back behind the shelter in the middle of the roundabout. A pretty nurse is selling poppies from a tray, and though she feels as if she's in a play, she is anyway. In Penny Lane, the barber shaves another customer. We see the banker sitting waiting for a trim, and then the fireman rushes in from the pouring rain. Very strange. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. There, beneath the blue suburban skies, I sit and meanwhile back Penny Lane is in my ears and in Though the song sounds really simple, I think perhaps because of that bright, bouncy piano sound, the piccolo solo and the nostalgia lyrics, it's actually anything but simple, and there's lots of really interesting things going on in terms of the song structure here. If we take a look at our song structure sheets here, you'll notice that this song has two different key centres. All of the verses are in the key of A, and the choruses, apart from the last one, are in the key of G. The original key for this was B and A, but I've just brought it down a whole tone just to make it that bit easier to play and more appropriate for ukulele. This is quite an unusual thing for a songwriter to do. Generally, choruses tend to be in the same key as the verse. Occasionally they will go up in pitch to create a brighter sound, or they'll use the relative minor. But McCartney here takes things down a whole step. McCartney does this in an interesting way, and it's quite an unusual thing for a songwriter to do, because generally when we go to a chorus we stay in the same key or we use the relative minor key. Occasionally songwriters will shift things up in pitch to make them sound brighter in the chorus, but we have the exact opposite here. We have things coming down a whole tone, so A in the verses and then G in the chorus.
On the corner is a banker with a motor car. The little children laugh at him behind his back.
Let's take a look at how he does all this then. The opening of the song, the initial chords in the verse, are really familiar to us. They're a really common chord combination that happens in a lot of songs, a 1-6-2-5 progression. You might have heard them used in songs like I got rhythm, I got music, or heart and soul, da 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 da. Really common progression, this 1-6-2-5. So we start with the 1 chord, our plain Jane A major. Then we go to the 6 chords. Now the reason this chord so often follows that 1 chord is that there's only 1 note difference between the two. So all you need to do is put an extra finger down on the 2nd fret of the E string, and as if by magic we get an F sharp minor, a nice simple smooth change. Then we go to the 2 chord, a really common chord in these progressions. In this case, we're doing it as a B minor 7. Just bar the whole of that 2nd fret, get your finger as close to the metal fret as possible and push down for a beautiful B minor 7. The 2 chord always wants to go to the 5 chord that follows it, and this is exactly what happens here. The reason it works so beautifully is that 2 of the notes are staying the same, and we have another 2 notes that are only 1/2 step away. So we get this lovely E7 chord. So if we put those 4 together, we have 1, 6, 2, 5. Or A, F sharp minor, B minor 7, and then finally our E7. In terms of strumming, on these opening 4 chords, I like to just play bouncy down strum chords on the beat. It keeps things really nice and light, and we get a bit of juxtaposition when we get the lovely A minor 7 coming in just a moment. So we just bounce down on every one of those chords. Now in terms of the physics of that, I'm coming down with my strumming hand, and as I do it I'm just squeezing, I'm pushing my fingers into the strings with my fretting hand like this. Now don't worry about the fact that you have 2 open strings ringing out. You get enough of a bouncy sound from the 2 closed strings, that's absolutely fine. So as you strum down, squeeze with this hand, and after you've strummed down, just release the tension. So think squeeze, squeeze. It's a bit like squeezing a lemon, squeeze, squeeze. Just release the tension. Don't take your fingers off after each squeeze, just let the tension go. And you'll hear, especially when we go to this F sharp minor, because we've got 3 fingers on the strings, you'll hear a lovely bouncing sound. Do you hear that? It's almost like a bouncy sound, isn't it? Which is really lovely. And then the chords are kind of cut short a little bit. Squeeze, squeeze. Same thing on a B minor 7. This time we're covering all 4 strings, so you really hear it here. And then finally the E7. So all down strums, if you want to put the odd up strum in between chords, that sounds really sweet as well. In slow motion, that will look and sound like this. And at tempo, isn't that lovely? Now here's where things start to get really clever. The next two chords give an idea that we're going to have exactly the same combination again. We have our A major, followed by our F sharp minor. That's our 1-6 combination. But then instead of going to the B minor 7 that you'd expect, we go to an A minor 7, which changes the feel of the piece completely. And this is where McCartney's really clever. Sounds like a straightforward song, just like any other jazz song, and then suddenly the mood changes completely with this lovely A minor 7 chord, giving a touch of melancholy at this point in the verse. What's happening here is really fascinating. If you've done any of my jazz lessons, you'll know that one of the most important chord combinations in jazz music is a 2-5-1 progression. That's what we have here, but in the key of G. So if you have a look at the chords highlighted in blue here, the A minor 7, and then the F sharp minor 7 flat 5. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it, that one? You can shorten it. The proper name for that chord is an F sharp half diminished. And this chord combination, the A minor 7 to the F sharp half diminished, is a 2-5 in the key of G. Generally in a jazz song, in that case, we would have A minor 7, followed by an F sharp half diminished, and then that would resolve to a G chord, such as G major 7. 2, 5, 1. And that makes sense because Paul McCartney is taking us from a verse, which is in the key of A, to a chorus, which is in the key of G. So to have a 2-5-1 progression in the key of G would make us want to go to a G chord, which is really lovely. And the reason that follows on from the key of A so beautifully is that we have an A minor 7 rather than an A major. So our ears are kind of tricked in a way. It's a really clever sleight of hand. Now, the only thing is we don't actually go to the key of G quite yet because we have a repeat of another verse. So what he does is really clever. You kind of think that you're going to change to the chorus here because we have a 2-5-1 in G, but rather than doing that, he takes us chromatically from F sharp to E using an F major 7, a beautiful E suspended 4 chord, and then another E, this time an E major. And because this E is the 5 chord in the key of A, it makes us want to go back to the start. The 5 chord in any key creates tension and it makes us want to go back to the 1 chord. So he's very cleverly taking us from a form of F sharp to an F, to an E, which is chromatically the next note down. And then that makes us want to go back to the start again. Very, very clever. You'll notice that even though we've got some exotic chords here, I've arranged this in such a way that they're actually relatively easy to play. And importantly, they smoothly change from one to another, creating a beautiful sound on our ukulele. The only real exception to that is the F sharp minor 7 flat 5, the F sharp half diminished. That is quite a tricky chord. Let's have a look at the A minor 7 first. That's nice and easy, easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? No fingers at all. Gives us our A minor 7. Then the F sharp half diminished. What we want to do is we're going to bar the whole of the 2nd fret. Try and keep that thumb on the back if you can. Try not to let it ride over the top because that's going to create a really awkward arm position here. We want a nice straight arm. So thumb on the back, nice bit of daylight this way like a circle. And also try and get this finger as close to this metal fret as possible. If we're over here, we're more likely to get chucks or kind of buzzes, whereas if we're over here, it's going to come nice and clean. And make sure there's at least a tiny bit of your finger coming over the top of the soundboard there. We don't want it just touching that top string like that because that uses the weakest part of your finger. If we just raise it up a little bit, we've got some strength there. Next up, we use our second finger here, a little bit like we're going to play a D7 chord. So that would be a D7, wouldn't it? And then finally, this is the tough bit. We reach up and over to the 4th fret of the C string, like so. Now you might have to experiment with this one. It's quite a tricky chord to do. See if you can move this finger up and down. Try not to let the strings fall into the grooves behind your knuckles, and see if you can get a nice clean chord. If you find that desperately hard to do, what you can do is just turn it into a 3-part chord, like so, just using 3 fingers. If you do that, just make sure you don't accidentally strum that G string. But if you can, 4-string chord, like so. Then things get much easier when we go to the F major 7, a beautiful sounding chord, but really easy to do. What I want you to notice is that I'm using my middle 2 fingers here. That's going to be really, really important in a moment. So middle 2 fingers on the 5th fret of the G and C strings, like so. The reason we're going to do that is we can easily pull that back to create this beautiful E sus4 chord. Same 2 fingers, notice that smooth change. We just pull it back to E sus4. And then when we go to the E, we drop our little finger down here on the 3rd fret of the E string. And if you can, take your index finger and place it on the 2nd fret of the A string, like so. Okay, that E looks really difficult like that, but notice if we come at it from here to here, it's not too bad. We just get that 1 finger down and then that one there. If you find it really tricky getting this index finger down, you can get away with that E chord just playing the top 3 strings, like so, in which case we would take those back and this one down. But if you can, get that one down as well for a lovely E major chord. So that's A minor 7, F sharp half diminished, like so. F major 7 looks like this. Pull it back 1 for E sus4. Little finger down here and 1st finger here. Fantastic. Now to really emphasise that change in feel from that A minor 7 onwards, I like to really alter dynamics in songs to keep them more interesting and really highlight that change. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to do something really, really easy. All we're going to do is, instead of this bouncy strum we've been doing so far, and you're going to do this bouncy strum for the first 6 chords. As soon as we hit this A minor 7, we're going to go to a more standard up and down strum. I like to do your calypso strum, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. Phonetically, you can think of that as walk, running, and running, walk, running, and running. And we do that to the end of the verse. That creates a really nice juxtaposition from that A minor 7 onwards. I'll show you what I mean. I'll do the chords all together, starting with the bouncy ones from the start of the verse. 2, 3, 4. The feel changed when I hit that A minor 7 and I changed the strum pattern. Let's give that a go at a really slow tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Let's do that together now, slightly faster. I'll put the lyrics in. Come in after 1, 2, 3 in Penny. Okay. 1, 2, 3. In Penny Lane there is a barber showing photographs of every head he's had the pleasure to know, and all the people that come and go stop and say hello. Fantastic. Well done, everyone. If If you found that particularly tricky, don't panic. You can pause the video and come back to this once you've practiced it, or you can just practice it later on in your own time. There's some really beautiful chord choices there, but I do recognise there's some difficult changes as well. But really work at it. It's such a beautiful sounding song. Don't be put off by those exotic chord names. Practice them through and you'll be absolutely fine. The next verse starts in exactly the same way. So we have our heart and soul chords. Then we have half that progression again. Our lovely change to that beautiful A minor 7. The half diminished chord yet again. Now notice here we still have our chromatic progression going down from F sharp to F to E. Only this time after the F major 7, the E sus to the E major are played for 2 beats each. So 2 down strums, or 2 beats if you like, of E sus 4. And then we go to the E major. 1, 2, 1, 2. Then what happens next is really lovely. We go to a D chord, D major. And because we've done this shape here with 2 fingers here, what we can do is we can just pull back these 3 fingers to a D chord like so. I'll show you that with the close camera. So F major 7 pulls back to E sus 4, these 2 fingers down, and then just pull everything back. Take away that first finger to the D chord like so. And here's Paul McCartney being clever again. Remember I told you earlier that chords that are 5 above another, they really want to resolve to a chord that they're 5 above. So that D chord, if we count up to it, it's 5 above G, G, A, B, C, D. So this D chord wants to resolve to a G chord. And if I play that D, notice a beautiful resolution to the G major. Tension, resolution. Tension, resolution. So that D chord is McCartney's way of linking these verses that are in A major to the choruses that are in G major. Just one simple chord and it works perfectly. What makes it really beautiful is that we have that chromatic movement from F sharp to F to E, and then back another whole tone to D, and then that works as the pivot into the chorus. Very clever, really beautiful.
Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. There beneath the blue suburban skies I sit and meanwhile
The chord progression in the chorus itself is really straightforward. Just a 1, 3, 4 progression twice. So G major to B minor to C, and then we just repeat that. G, B minor and C. So G major, B minor, just bar the whole of that 2nd fret. Again, try and get that finger as close to the metal fret as possible. At least a bit of fingertip showing over the top. And then reach over with your ring finger to the 4th fret of the G string, like so. So G, B minor. Then we have a C chord down here. And we repeat that. G, B minor, and C. To try and make arrangements on the ukulele sound more like the original, and to just give a little bit of fun and pizzazz to them, I like to add little snippets of melody to our strumming. I think it's really important. So this next bit is optional, but when you hit that C major chord like so, try adding these extra notes as you strum. We're going to add this one here for an F note. It's almost like we're turning it into a C sus4. We take it away, and then we put a finger on the 2nd fret of the C string, which is kind of like a C add 9. Don't worry about the names too much. But when you do that, we get this almost like a mini melody, which sounds like this. And I can do that again. Now Now, when you do that with a strum, you don't have to isolate the strings like I am. Just keep strumming. You'll get this. See how that's working in slow motion? So slow-mo. And sped up. The second time I often don't add that D note because there's not quite time. Like so. Now it's completely optional, but what it's doing is it's mirroring that lovely little trumpet line that's in the original. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my it's that lovely little kind of mini melody that's in there. So if you want to, you can put that in on the C. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. Or if you find that difficult, just strum 2 C's. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. Notice I'm still just doing that simple calypso strum at this point. Then we repeat that again. The second time we go to C, don't put that little riff in, just keep it straight. There, beneath the blue suburban skies. Then another little bit of cleverness by Paul McCartney. We have an E7 chord. Now that E7 chord is doing something very, very clever. That E7 chord is 5 above an A chord. If I count up from A, B, C, D, E. See how E is 5 above it. So whenever we play a type of E chord, especially an E7, it wants to resolve to A. Why does he do that? Well, all of the verses, all the solo are in the key of A. So it's a clever way of joining back the chorus to the verse. So from the verse to the chorus, he uses a D to join them together because we're going down in pitch. And then to come back up to pitch, he uses an E to join them together. Really simple, but really clever and beautiful. Let's try chorus together in slow motion. 1, 2, 3. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. There, beneath the blue suburban skies, I sit and while back. Notice that on that E7 I play it as an NC and no chord. Whenever we write NC in music, it means no chord, but really we hit one chord and just leave it ringing out. So let's do that again a little bit faster, and when we hit that E7 we're just going to hit it once and allow it to hang like so. Come in after 1, 2, 3, penny. 1, 2, 3. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. There, beneath the blue suburban skies, I sit and meanwhile back. Yeah, fantastic. So far we've had our verse, another verse, and then that lovely segue into the chorus. The segue out of the chorus takes us into another verse. Then we have another verse, just the same as the first one. Penny Lane, there is a fireman with an hourglass, and in his pocket is a portrait of the Queen. He likes to keep his fire engine clean. Whole measure of E sus4, it's a clean machine. And E. Then we go to the lovely instrumental section. At this point we go to the solo, and here we have a beautiful solo by a piccolo trumpet. That's a trumpet which is higher in pitch. Paul McCartney wanted something sounded like the kind of Brandenburg concerto, but he didn't know how to kind of really explain it. So George Martin helped him transcribe it, but the piccolo player mostly played from Paul McCartney just humming what he wanted him to play. Now this section presented me with a bit of a dilemma as an arranger, because if we try to do the piccolo solo, there are so many notes it would be almost impossible to do on the ukulele, so most players wouldn't be able to do it. Also, and I have seen a few videos of people attempting it on uke and guitar, it doesn't sound that great on a stringed instrument. It's not designed, the notes don't flow beautifully like they would on a piccolo trumpet. So rather than doing the exact notes of the piccolo trumpet, which would be far too difficult for most players, I believe, what I've done is I've done a chordal progression which hints at the melody that goes along with that piccolo trumpet solo. It also hints at some of the melody from the lovely backing vocals that we have going on here from Lennon and McCartney. I'd like as many of you as possible to really have a go at this solo section, playing these chords through. They're really tough, but it's fantastic for your learning because these chord shapes that we take up and down the fretboard are used in loads of songs. So it's really good for your learning, it's good for your fingering practice, and it's a really good thing to have a try at these. But if you find them completely unachievable, what you can do is just play the normal chords to a verse and that will work fine. But what I've done here to make it sound more interesting and beautiful and kind of highlight the melody progression, if you like, as it goes up and down, is I've taken the chords from the verse, but I've played them in such a way up the fretboard that you have the feel of that rising melody. Can you hear it there? If I play that, if I really highlight the A string notes, feel that upward feeling, and that kind of matches with the da 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 da. I can't even sing that high. It matches the feel of that piccolo solo without having to play every one of those individual notes, which is really tricky. So we start with our A major as before. This is our setting off point. Then we've got F sharp minor. Now this time, rather than playing it this way, we're going to use this 4-finger chord like so. Now, if you prefer, what you can do is bar the whole of the 2nd fret and use 2 fingers on the 4th fret like this. But I find it easier just to think of it almost like a diminished 7th chord, which would look like this, but it's been split apart. So a bit of a stretch. Okay, so A, F sharp minor. This B minor 7 is particularly tricky because you've got to almost be a little bit double jointed and bend this finger back on itself like so. So it covers the bottom 2 strings of the 5th fret. Then we reach up and over with our 3rd finger up here onto the 6th fret. And this finger, it's only touching this note up here, this B note. It doesn't have to press down on the whole of the all 4 strings, just this note here for this B minor 7. Now, if you find that really tricky, but you still want to have a go, and you can do this with most of these chords, just play the bottom 3 strings physically, C, E and A strings, and just use your first 2 fingers, and you can just use this shape. Okay, doesn't have quite as much richness as the full chord, but it gets away with it. It sounds okay. And likewise for the E7, if you really struggle, just take that shape up too. And again, strum the bottom 3 strings. So as kind of 3-string chords, they'll look like this. You could even do that one 3 fingers like that, and then. But with the full version. Okay. And then this E7. This is like an A7 that's been taken all the way up the fretboard. Like so, isn't that lovely? And we just keep strumming with those. These next few chords are the trickiest in the whole piece, but give them a go if you can. It's a lot easier on a tenor instrument, this one, because you have a bit more space. Soprano or concert, things will get really squishy here, but give it your best shot. What we're going to do is we're going to take our index finger way up here to the 9th fret. You can spot it because we have this gap of 2 here between 7 and 10. So way up here to the 9th fret, and then our little finger is going to go right down here on the 12th like so. Okay. that gives us an A chord. You might think, how's that an A chord? Well, we've taken a C to a C sharp, to a D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. It's a movable shape that's been taken up. Next up, we have another F sharp minor. And this is basically an A minor chord that's been taken all of the way up the fretboard, like so. Now, that's barring the whole of that 9th fret, so this index finger hasn't moved at all. But rather than having this little finger down here on the 12th, our ring finger comes up here onto the 11th. Now, I find that particularly tricky, and even on my tenor, I'm starting to run out of space here. So I'll often actually change that to, rather than doing an F sharp minor like so, I'll do an F sharp minor 7, which means just take your little finger away. So I play it like this. And you still get that lovely downward movement. And you might think, why am I doing that? Well, just because it's close enough to the original. The reason I've written it as the original is that that's the chord that Paul McCartney has chosen at that particular moment. But you can get away with this just fine. Next up, we've got an A minor 7 shaped like so. A really beautiful chord, that. Quite tricky. What's happened is that's a D minor 7 shape, which would look like this. Just taken all of the way up until it becomes an A minor 7 up here. Really head for that gap between 8, 9 and 10. So just think F shape, D minor shape, and then little finger down. Real squish that one. Try and keep that wrist as straight as possible, like so. Again, if you really struggle with that, try a 3-finger version like so. Okay, just makes it that bit easier. You can turn any of these chords into 3 fingers just by ignoring the notes on the G string and strumming down those 3 there like so. So all of those chords give that feel of that rising melody. And then it starts to come back. So then we pull back and we bring it down here for this next chord, this F sharp half diminished. And then notice you get that feel of the melody coming back down. And then resolution to the D, which is really nice. For that F sharp half diminished, you've got 2 choices. You can bar the 5th fret, 2nd finger down here on the C string, 3rd finger down here on the A string. Or I can get a cleaner sound to actually use all of my fingers. So I do like a G shape on the top 3 strings and this one here. Then when I go to the next chord, I just flatten down that first one like that. So F sharp half diminished, F major 7. Okay. Or you could do F sharp half diminished barred and just take away this one for the F major 7. That kind of illustrates that nice kind of what I often refer to as voice leading, where the chords are only 1 note different from each other. That's why we get that lovely smooth transition coming downwards. Then to finish off, finally something a lot easier at E sus4 again for 2 beats. Use your middle 2 fingers so you can put these ones down here for the E. And then we come back here for this D major. Now this one I like to do a little bit of a triplet on. Triple it down. Or you can use 1 finger, triple it down. What that does is it creates this kind of drama before we get back to the chorus, which kind of highlights what happens with the piccolo at that point. Da, 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 da. Now, there's 2 ways you can do that. What you can do is you can just take your normal strumming finger and we're going to go double time, so faster than we were before. Down, up, down, down, up, down, down. Triple it down. Down, up, down, down, up, down, down. Or you could do a traditional Hawaiian triplet where we come down with 1 finger or more. Triple it down. Okay, that's down with your finger, down with your thumb, up with whichever works, and then again, finger, thumb, triple it down, or one finger, triple it down. Fantastic. Notice when I do those triplets, I'm only really hitting the outside couple of strings for most of that strum to keep it nice and smooth. Really tricky those, aren't they? Really, really difficult. So if you find yourself thinking, absolutely no way in the world I'm going to be able to do those, just play the chords to a normal verse and then come in on a chorus. But let's just play through those chords in slow motion, up close, just so you can see them all together. So I have A, F sharp minor, B minor 7, E7, this A up here, just bar the ninth, A minor 7, then a whole measure of the next one, half diminish, flatten for F major 7, E sus4, E, da 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 da, and then played more at tempo. So we finish on this lovely D chord. And of course, what chord is D 5 above? Well, a D chord is 5 above a G, right? G, A, B, C, D. So that D chord creates the tension to take us into another chorus, which is in the key of G major, which is exactly what we do.
Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. There beneath the blue suburban skies. Penny Lane.
So from that lovely D chord, that takes us to another chorus just here in the key of G. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. For a fish and finger pies in summer, meanwhile back. Another verse. Behind the shelter in the middle of the roundabout, a pretty nurse is setting poppies from a tray. And though she feels as if she's in a play, she is anyway. Whole measure of sus4, whole measure of A. Penny Lane, the barber shaves another customer. We see the banker sitting waiting for a trim. And then the fireman rushes in from the pouring rain. Very strange. Another chorus. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. There beneath the blue suburban skies, I sit and meanwhile back. Remember, all of those choruses finish with an E7 chord. I remember what I told you, that E7 wants to resolve to an A. A, B, C, D, E. E is 5 above A, so it wants to go to an A. And generally that would mean going to another verse, wouldn't it? Ba, 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 da, ba, ba. But because we're coming to the lovely crescendo, the final part of the song, rather than going to a verse, he does another chorus. But this time in the key of A. So every single chord has just been shifted up one tone, okay, or one pitch. So everything that we were doing before, like a G major, is replaced by an A major, okay? And a B minor is replaced by a C sharp minor. The chords aren't too tricky. A major, we've been doing all along. Then we go to a C sharp minor. It's exactly the same shape that we do for B minor, but 2 frets higher, which makes sense when you think about it, right? That we've gone from B to C sharp. Okay. So that C sharp, all you need to do is bar the whole of the 4th fret, and then your ring finger up here at the 6th fret. So we have our A major, Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes, a D now, and just like we had those lovely little suspended notes for a C, we can do them here like this. Just creating this lovely little suspended run, just like we did with the C here. We're going to do a similar thing up here. And you'll see in the visual representation of this final chorus, notice I've done some little chord diagrams to help you as well. So basically we have a normal D chord, we add our finger here, turning it into a sus4, take it away, take away this finger gives you a sus2, and then you do it again. Now at tempo that will sound like this. Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. Okay, just a little hint at that lovely trumpet part. Da 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 da. Again, if you find that too tricky, just stay on D for the whole measure. Then let's just carry on. We have A major again. There beneath the blue suburban skies I sit and meanwhile back. This time we stay on that D for 2 whole measures. I like to slow things down, or even sometimes just strum it once. I sit and meanwhile back. And then we can finish on our A major. You could shake it out with a bit of tremolo. Penny Lane. And that's that final resolution to the 1 chord. The song finally feels finished, and that's why we don't have an E7 at the end, because that would feel like a cliffhanger. We want our 1 chord all finished. So that final chorus, Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes, there beneath the blue suburban skies I sit and meanwhile back. Penny Lane. Isn't that lovely? So he's taken that chorus and lifted it up to A, which was the original key which we started the whole song in. So it gives you lovely closure. Perfect ending. And that's it, folks. You now have everything you need to play Penny Lane and enjoy it. And even if you're not playing it right now, I hope you found that song structure and chord analysis really interesting. What I love about this song is how deceptive it is. It sounds so bright, bubbly and simple, yet when you look at it, there's a lot going on underneath the bonnet, isn't there? Some beautiful chromatic progressions, some changes from one key into another. And I hope that taught you something, how to link one section to another. It's really cool, isn't it? That was a whole heap of fun to teach. I really hope you enjoyed that, guys. Stay fab, stay wonderful, and I'll see you for another Fab 4 lesson very soon. Take care, everyone. You can.